Heavenly Father, today we put on the full armor to protect us against attack. We put on the belt of truth to protect against lies and deception. We put on the breastplate of righteousness to protect our hearts from the temptations. We put the gospel of peace on our feet to walk in your light, peace, and freedom with the Holy Spirit. We rebuke anxious thoughts. We take up your shield of faith for protection to block and destroy all the darts and threats thrown at us by the enemy. We put on the helmet of salvation to cover our minds and thoughts, reminding us that we are children of a mighty King. We are forgiven, set free, saved by the blood of Jesus. We take up the sword of the Spirit, your living word, that has the power to demolish strongholds and is sharper than any double-edged sword. We come to you, Lord, in prayer daily. In Jesus' mighty name we pray. Amen. What's up, you guys? Welcome to The Imagination. I'm your host, Emma, and today I'm so honored to have back on the show once again Satanic ritual abuse, mind control, Stargate Project, Freemason, Jesuit, and organized abuse survivor, overcomer, and whistleblower, loving mother, content creator, faithful servant to the Most High, former school teacher, gardener, floral design extraordinaire, singer and songwriter, poet, poetry and creative writer, and someone I'm so grateful to call my friend, Kadaya. In case any of you have missed any of Kadaya's incredible episodes, if you're new here, or if you just need a recap, here's a brief synopsis of her testimony, as well as what we will be talking about today. From infancy, Kadaya was subjected to horrific familial trafficking, ritual abuse, and mind control programming involving things like electroshock, drowning, and soul-shattering rituals designed to fracture her into dissociative identities. Her extraordinary intelligence and spiritual gifts were weaponized by programmers tied to Freemasons, Jesuits, and elite bloodlines, forcing her hidden altars into trafficking operations hidden behind churches, lodges, and institutions. Yet, even in the darkness, a happy childhood front persona shielded her core self until divine intervention began to awaken her. When amnestic childhood memories began to surface in her 20s, she was met with disbelief, gaslighting, betrayal, and the full cult playbook: Darvo, ostracism, weaponization of her own children, financial strangulation, a fraudulent protective order, and exile across an international border with nothing but the clothes on her back. Her husband filed for divorce, citing delusional beliefs. Family, friends, pastors, and authorities turned away or actively participated in her silencing. She lost her home, her livelihood as a public school teacher, her safety, and most agonizingly, daily access to her two beloved children, now used as collateral to punish her refusal to stay silent. But the enemy miscalculated. Through unrelenting prayer, fasting, 444 hertz music in the key of David, and deep trust in Yahweh's voice, Kadaya has experienced miraculous physical and spiritual healing, including the complete restoration of her skin from psoriasis and trauma wounds. She continues integrating memories, breaking programming, and guiding others through her thriving Telegram community, where she shares things like altar photos and profiles, program identification tools, worship songs, live updates, and hope for a modern-day second Exodus. Despite heartbreaking betrayal, Kadaya stands unbowed. A fierce mama bear, she fights for her children's freedom while exposing systemic abuse. Her burden for the imprisoned reflects her heart of Christ. You can find Kadaya's riveting and inspiring testimony episodes below in the show notes by clicking on her playlist and starting from the very first video we recorded and moving to present day. On today's episode, we are bringing you an emergency address, breaking news, a display of corruption that is rotten to its core. Recently, Kadaya and another survivor, who all of you who listen here know as her training partner, faced a horrific sequence of events and targeting that led to a real-life altercation with authorities, aka the network. In today's episode, Kadaya's training partner will be revealed. More intimate details about her life and the life of her training partner will be revealed. Details surrounding this criminal altercation will be revealed. All will be revealed. What is dark will today be drowned out by the light, and the truth, and guided by the power and authority of the Holy Spirit. This will be one of the most damning and important episodes we've ever done on this podcast, and I ask all of you all to sit and witness from start to finish. There will also be video and photo evidence shown as well. If you're listening and not watching, I would highly suggest moving to a platform with video if at all possible. And I encourage you all to jump in the fight to help set the captives free. Kadaya's story is living proof that no programming is stronger than Yahweh's sovereignty. No trap can outsmart his higher ways, and no darkness can extinguish a heart fully surrendered to him. She's a beacon of hope, a warrior of light, and a testament that faith and trust in God's voice are always enough. So you guys, without further ado, please help me in welcoming back today's guest of honor, voice for the voiceless, woman of God, survivor, warrior, fierce mama bear, family court reform activist, anti-child abuse and survivor advocate, and a woman on a mission to equip other survivors with what to expect when getting out through the power and hope of faith in Christ, the one, the only, Kadaya. Kadaya, I am so grateful to have you back today. Thank you for coming on and sharing this really, really important information with us today.
Thank you for having me back. Hey, everybody. It's such a pleasure as always.
And if you've noticed, Kadaya's background's changed. She has a new office this time around, and I love it.
How do you like my barn? You may hear gunshots in the background, so don't be alarmed.
And so we have a lot to talk about today, including how you got to where you are today. You're obviously in a different location than you've been the last few episodes, and so much has happened since the last time that you came on. So I just want to sort of get right into it. So I'm just going to hand the mic over to you and let you start. Like I said, for people listening, we do have a video we're going to be showing today. We have a lot of photos. So if you guys are listening, it's not mandatory that you jump on a video platform, but if you're able to, it'll help you understand and see some of the context that we're going to be talking about today. So without further ado, Kadaya, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Wow. I hope you all are in for a ride. I'll start by saying that. As you've noticed, I'm not at the inn anymore. Where we left off in the last interview, I had shared about the intention of the network between myself and my training partner, whose name is Ryan Leonard. And they had intended to activate my JL programming, which I think I went through in pretty good detail in that interview. Their intention, as I had expressed last interview, was to activate a vicious cycle and a program between myself and Ryan that would culminate in death, homicide, suicide, something along those lines. I went through the tent pegs. Now, thankfully, before I had arrived, JL had already begun to defect. And it was because of this altar of mine that I actually began to defect from mind control at all. She was one of the first ones to start to break me out, even before I became aware. And I've shared photos of her and some of her activities that helped with this on my Telegram at the Song of the Lamb, the Second Exodus, if anybody wants to go check it out. I also have included a renunciation and a prayer for deprogramming, Delta programming, JL programming specifically. And a lot of people have reported freedom and deliverance from that. So glory to God. The program with JL didn't work. Their plan failed, but of course they had a backup plan. And their backup plan was to frame Ryan for a crime, to get him incarcerated, and to implicate me, because we had escaped from the network. We were beginning to defect. We know a lot. We know too much. And we knew that something like this was coming very specifically, because we became aware upon our reconnecting that there was some kind of a Bonnie and Clyde programming dynamic that was meant to succeed between us for the purpose of evil, right? In order to ultimately get us in trouble. And this is one of the reasons we began to deprogram each other, because we didn't want to enter this cycle. We didn't want to enter this dynamic. Yah had exposed it. We didn't want anything to result. We didn't want it to prosper. So we began to just defect by becoming aware of it by the grace of God. And the network didn't count on the fact that Christ was in our midst, helping us through this process. And so they were really confident that this would prosper. So we knew that there was supposed to be some type of setup or framing for murder. And Ryan and I had been twinned in the programs. I talked about a little bit about some of the twinning procedures in the last interview, which were mutual torture that we went through. That and a lot of other procedures I may cover in the future that basically achieved a single mind between us. And one of the things that we went through, because we were both bred for the purpose of this program as a part of the Merovingian bloodline. Some people refer to it as the Davidic bloodline or the bloodline of Christ. But through the hybridization project and the creation of our embryos in a laboratory, they yoked us with what they call a bloodline of Abaddon. And so Abaddon is the fallen angel in the book of Revelation who is unleashed from the bottomless pit. He is the angel of death, chaos, as well as destruction. Also represented in the female form as Shiva in the statue outside of CERN, which many believe today is modern day Pergamum and the site of the bottomless pit. But we had been enduring a ton of spiritual warfare because Abaddon claimed myself and Ryan as a blood son and blood daughter through covenants that were done under mind control and satanic ritual abuse. So when we reconnected, we began to have these flashbacks and memories come in. We began to compare notes. Some of you may have heard my interview, I think it was a couple interviews ago with you, Emma, where I had an encounter in the night with Abaddon, who came into my bus where I was living, and tormented me and harassed me for about 5 hours through the night. And I demanded in the name of Jesus Christ what he was doing there and what right he had to access me. And he simply responded, "This is my domain. This is my domain." And I entered into one of the most horrific nights of spiritual warfare that I have ever been through. And so shortly after that interview, I reconnected with Ryan and I explained how all of this happened earlier in that interview. But he had written a novel called The Domain of Abaddon, The Jackal of Ghost Pine, The Domain of Abaddon, that was insight into the layout of some of his programming. One of the structures within his internal system of mind control was a school system. And he had actually written me and one of my alters as a character into his novel. And I'll link it below, or I'll give it to you, Emma, if you wouldn't mind linking it below. If anybody's curious to read it, it is available on Amazon, Ryan's novel, because it gives a really good insight into how programming works and what the inner world looks like, where different parts of the fractured, fragmented soul get trapped. And so in this book are all of these different characters, but most of them are Ryan's parts and his alters. So we were actually able to use this as a blueprint, in addition with prayer discernment from the Holy Spirit to help him to deprogram while I was there, and myself included. So we were just like marveling at all of the things that Yah was revealing as we were seeking him, but we were also cautious because we understood that our reunion was meant for evil, was meant for the network. So we this is why we spent so much time just in prayer and in fasting, because we didn't want to be taken for a ride. And you know what? We were taken for one. But it didn't prosper to the extent that it was meant to. So I'm going to explain what happened. And I apologize if there's some noise with the wind in there. There's some metal above me. Are you able to hear okay?
Yeah, it's blocking it out pretty good.
Okay, good. So we were twinned in the program, right? I mentioned Abaddon. We get together, we start to compare. He's a writer, I'm a writer. And we had psychically, our minds were psychically and energetically linked to such a degree where we could feel each other's emotions, read each other's thoughts, like telepathically, like without even effort. This stuff was just happening. And we were comparing the poems that we had written before we had our memories come back of one another. And they were like finished poems that were finishing one another. They were so similar, right down to very specific metaphors that neither of us had even read before. And so we're, putting now together this blueprint of how we'd been programmed and what was basically the destination of the network for us so that we could learn how to break free of it once and for all, so we can understand where we think we're still operating an agency, but where maybe we're not. So the whole thing was freaky, right? Like it was such a mind trip. And before I arrived at the inn, I was understandably somewhat reluctant to go, even though it was my only option. I didn't have anywhere else to escape the handlers that I was at. I had been praying for a way of escape. Obviously, I wanted to see Ryan. Once we remembered one another, I wanted to see him. But I also was aware of the programming that was intended to get us into quite a pickle. So as I was praying, Yah said to me, if you don't go, Ryan is going to end up in prison or worse. And I could see that because I had been spending time on the phone with him. I could see on Instagram what appeared to be very unhinged posts that he was making, because he was being triggered, obviously, to be set up for something. And this could be used to frame him as crazy, insane, dangerous, or volatile. So I could kind of see this setup building, and I'm like, okay, yeah, but what am I about to get into the midst of? But he just repeated himself, if you don't go, Ryan's going to end up in prison or worse. So he's on his Instagram, he's venting his trauma and raging against these pedophiles while crying out for the rescue of these children, right? And people, I think have been really swift to judge Ryan or be offended by him because they don't know or understand his altars. And one of Ryan's altars, his name is Rudy. I used to call him Rude Rudy. And he is what is known in the programming as a garbage kid who was split off during horrific trauma where he was forced to, pardon the term, skull F his grandfather who was in the military. He had lost his eye. And he was forced to do that from a very young age as a part of this programming. He's been through horrific abuse, worse than what I even just mentioned, but that's the extent that I'm willing to share at this moment. And so this part named Rudy fractured off as a garbage kid, and I go through garbage pail kid programmings. If anyone's familiar with that card game from the 80s, I go through this in some detail on my Telegram channel so people understand. But a garbage kid is a fractured off split that would not cooperate with the network, so they throw them away. But that fractured part of the soul still exists, and then they continue to perpetuate the sexual torture, the sexual violation, sodomy, whatever it is. They continue to perpetuate that until they get a fracture or a fragment that will cooperate with the demands of whatever the behavioral conditioning is. Now, Rudy did not cooperate, so he was cast aside as a garbage kid. And it's because of Rudy, Ryan's alter Rudy, that Ryan even broke free of the programming in the first place. And most people who would interact with Rudy, and like Rudy, like he's predominantly the one who would post on Ryan's Instagram his stories, but he literally just surfaced out of the inner world of Ryan just recently. So he doesn't even have a scope of how to actually effectively interact with people. All he knows is that he's angry. It's wrong what was done to him. It's wrong what is continuing to be done to these children like him. And so he's venting all of this on Instagram, right? But the network, I can see, is intentionally provoking and activating this part through gang stalking, through harassment, probably some internal programming and sabotaging that's going on in order to paint him as a lunatic, essentially. Even though I could understand what some of Rudy's more cryptic posts were about, he kind of has this like he's like a young thug kind of teenage gangster type of personality, like the way maybe a child would be who is trying to be like an older, tougher teenager. So Ryan's posting these things on Instagram before I'm going down there, and I'm seeing like he's even got tears streaming down his face in some of these posts. Like it's coming from a place of pain and not knowing yet how to interact on the surface world, and he's just mad. And so after I get there, I'm able to earn his trust eventually, just simply by learning his name. Yah had given me insight. And so once I was able to use his name, he softened because he'd been officially identified and seen truly for the first time by somebody who wasn't just offended or angry at some of the belligerent things that he sometimes says and does. So Rudy eventually takes down his barking dog posts off of Instagram and says to me, eventually he's asking me, should I leave this up? Should I take this down? Is this okay? Is this acceptable? And it was just heartbreaking because he really didn't know. And he said to me afterwards, like, now I'm really looking forward to maybe making some friends. It just like broke my heart. And so I just wanted to give you an example of some of the things that we're dealing with, as survivors. And I want to share more of Ryan's story today, because this isn't just about Ryan. It's not just about me. This is a really good microcosm of all of survivors. And a lot of, I think, people who have been wrongfully imprisoned because they don't get the proper help that they need. As far as like deliverance from the Most High Yah in Yeshua HaMashiach, Jesus Christ of Nazareth. They're not properly ministered to by the body of Christ. People maybe are leery or judgmental, or they recoil, or they're afraid. And there's just such a lack of understanding and a lack of education that needs to happen for survivors and those who have gone through things like Ryan has gone through. So, I'm praying. Okay, I'm seeing Rudy posting these things on Instagram, and I know that's just one of Ryan's altars. It's not his core. I said, is this really good idea? Again, if you don't go, Ryan's going to end up in prison, or worse. He's going to be framed. He's going to be set up. He's going to be there for life, or worse, or dead. And I said, well, why me? Right? I mean, I knew that we were training partners. And so I had some understanding. And he said to me, you're the only one. You're the only one that can help him. And so when I heard that in prayer, I immediately became suspicious of like matrix programming, not like, like it's just, you're the only chosen one. I knew that was not the case, right? It was because we had been twinned in the program, and because of that, I had the mind and insight to be able to see inside his system, to reach into the darkness, to minister effectively to his parts, to provide them some counsel and some help deprogramming, and also me, because Ryan is a rapid cyclone of like rapidly switching parts. And with the help of the Holy Spirit, I was able to see and learn his parts, their names, their ages, their traumas, their skills, how they were programmed, and so that was good. So we had 7 months together at the inn where we were working through these things, and some of those things were worked through with conflict, and sometimes they were worked through with peace. Because I was still deprogramming, right? And so sometimes we were triggering each other. And again, that was part of the enemy's intention, right? But what ended up happening is it was kind of like we were like two floppy disks, like being smashed together until they broke, through even some of the harder things that we went through, where we weren't getting along very well, or we weren't understanding each other. That exposed programming, that exposed triggers, and like with humility and continuing to go to the Lord, continuing to ask him for wisdom, to continuing to stay in his word, continuing to study his word, continuing to fast and to pray, we were able to overcome all of those obstacles and break down some of those programs together. So it was really, really good. It was hard. It was exhausting, at times, but it was actually a really beautiful process, and we helped each other a lot through it. I could continue. I just thought maybe I should pause and take a breath and if you want to ask any questions.
One thing I did want to ask, we've heard about Ryan. Now that we know who he is, you have discussed him in your testimony. So he was obviously a big part of your childhood life. How long had it been since you had seen or had contact with him before you two were reunited recently? How long was it since you had seen him?
So we began to be programmed together, starting in childhood. The last time we believe that we actually saw one another, was probably a decade ago.
Wow.
Yeah, a decade ago. Yeah, and so it was a really trippy thing, to actually see each other again. And when we first reconnected on Instagram, it was the sound of his voice that started to jog my memory and draw me in. And I couldn't quite figure out why at first. Of course, we had been set up by the network to connect on Instagram. When I explained how that happened, I think in my last interview, well, actually, I don't know that I did. So how it happened was, the handler, who had been posing as a minister and giving me a place of refuge in her home, she passed me her phone, and her Instagram was open to Ryan Leonard's profile. And you can go, Ryan Leonard's Instagram still, want to see who he is. And I'm going to show photos of him anyway. You can go look him up. She passes me his Instagram profile, and to a poem that he had written called Bones and Ash. And I had just written a song above that, but like a worship song, called Living Bones, about the Valley of Dry Bones in Ezekiel and the resurrection of the army of Yah, or of Israel, in these times that I believe that we're in. And so she shows me his post, and she's like, "You should send him your song." And I thought it was kind of weird that she didn't just send it, because it was a song we had worked on together and produced and published back when I was doing the Quickening Project and producing that album, before it was all taken away and taken down, because of disobedience and a refusal to continue to report to these handlers. But she passed me his Instagram. She's like, you should just, she made it seem casual, right? You should just send him a message. And I'm like, okay, I don't know why you don't do it, but I did it. And so through that, we struck up a conversation, and then the rest was history. And so, again, something that the enemy meant for evil, that Yah meant for good. And you're going to see that as I continue to unfold this story, all of the things that the enemy had meant, Yah is flipping. And this is the beauty of the resurrection power of the risen Lamb, is that even our own mistakes and even in our own blindness, his grace is sufficient to redeem everything in our favor. When we're walking in faith, when we're trusting in the power of his grace, which is sufficient. And of course, also obediently following him to the very best of our ability.
Amazing.
So I documented a lot when I was with Ryan, because one of the things that Yah had told me when I asked how I could help him was tell his story. Tell his story. And it's not just Ryan's story, it's all of our stories as survivors, the stories of a lot of our parts, a lot of our identities. And it's also a testimony of the grace and mercy of the Most High, and of the power of the gospel and the blood of the Lamb that's been at work in our lives through this. And Emma, you actually, as you know, you interviewed Ryan once, and that interview was not aired because one of his alters did the interview, and he was listening to it afterwards, and he wasn't happy with it. I listened to it. I listened to it as well, and I can understand why he didn't want it to be aired, even though there were things in it that were just making me laugh. But yeah, he wasn't able to get his testimony out the way that he had wanted to, because that's what happens when we're dealing with sabotage outside. Often we're dealing with internal sabotage as well within our own system. So I met over 30 of Ryan's identities or alters, by name specifically, but I mean, he has so many more. He is probably one of the most fractured and fragmented people, definitely the most that I have ever personally met. But I got to know about 30 of them by name. And the one that the network intended to frame and set up for murder, his name is Billy Syke. And I mentioned Rudy is the name of the gangster mouthing off on Instagram, writing cryptic posts that would then make it easier to frame Ryan's part, named Billy Syke, for whatever it was they want to do to incarcerate him, get us separated, or even killed. And so what was cool, though, is I got to know an identity of my own, a new alter that I didn't know that I had. And her name is Chantal. It's me, right? But I was fully conscious operating in this part named Chantal, co-conscious with her for the first time, kind of in awe, because I was discovering her history, what Yah had done for her that I was unaware of until I was with Ryan. Even discovered that I could text him without even touching my phone. And I was not doing this consciously, even, but we would have, I would have had a part that would text him without even touching my phone. It was the weirdest, creepiest thing. And as these things are happening, I'm taking them to the Lord, right? I'm like, I don't want to be yoked with any demonic powers at all. I don't want to be yoked with anything psychically that has come from the network. Just remove anything that is not meant for you to redeem, yeah. If it's not meant for you to redeem, if it's coming from a demonic source that I've been yoked with through these torture rituals, because that's what they do, like, please take it away. So I'm also going through this process in healing myself as I'm spending time with Ryan. And I think maybe this would be a good time to flip through the slideshow that I sent. Okay, so this is Billy Syke, everybody. This is one of Ryan Leonard's altars. And again, Ryan often has several parts at up front at once. And so sometimes it's a little more fluid than to be able to say, oh, this is always this identity or this identity. But this is a photo that I took of Ryan when I walked into his room at the inn once to check on him, after he was having a really rough go of some flashbacks. And I walked in and he had written this message on the sheets on the bed. But it says the only way that this can work is if everyone says sorry. The only way this can work is if everyone owns up, says sorry, and hugs. And then underneath, he put a heart, Yeshua, Jesus. And this is when he was really wrestling through releasing forgiveness to the perpetrators. The ones who had hurt him in the past and the ones who were still continuing to hurt him, to hinder his progress in life, to continue to harass, to continue to steal, to continue to access him, right down to handlers that did access Ryan while I was at the inn as well. And Ryan had Jesus Christ programming as well. So one of his personalities believed that he was Jesus Christ as well, which was I really needed a lot of help and prayer and discernment and wisdom and how to work with that personality, and begin to bring him into truth and freedom. But what was cool is that Yah used this personality, just Jesus Christ personality, to bring Ryan's soul into forgiveness and release him and deliver him. And I'm going to eventually share on the Telegram an audio recording of this day and the event where this happened, where you can hear Ryan, and this is with all of his permission, by the way, where you can hear Ryan working through the process of forgiveness with Yah, and the crying of his soul, like he's crying, he's wailing, releasing forgiveness as he's experiencing deliverance as a result of that. Because of course the Bible says that when we don't forgive, we're handed over to the tormentors, right? And so while yes, God is a God of justice, vengeance is in his hands. It says he will repay. Our job as followers of him, in order for us to receive mercy and forgiveness for our sins, is to release mercy and forgiveness to others. Doesn't mean we don't pursue justice, but we still release ourselves by releasing them into forgiveness. Otherwise, those tethers still have that the torture, the pain, the betrayal, the torment that they inflicted upon us, that pain is allowed to just continue to recycle. So you can see, it was kind of funny afterwards. Ryan said he's looking at these photos. He's like, that was probably the most resurrected psychotic break I've ever had, or near psychotic break. So I just wanted to give some context to that image.
And the last time Kadaya was on, also, we showed a video of who you guys now know is Ryan, of part of his healing journey where he was experiencing abreactions. And so you guys actually already saw the intensity of Ryan's torment and what this healing journey has been like from him. You could hear it in his voice in that video. And if you missed that, I'll have that in the show notes for you guys. But that was an extremely revealing video that Ryan allowed Kadaya to share on his behalf.
Take care.
So I'll go to this one.
So you're just gonna see some notes. Like we're trying to deprogram. We're in warfare. So in one of the rooms, we had made just like a mural on the wall, kind of like an altar to the Lord, where we were just throwing scripture up after truth after truth after truth, as much as we could, so that we could like really get it ingrained into our ears, our eyes, our minds, our hearts, and our spirits. So this is just one example of some of like the drawings that we did. Perfect love casts out fear, a breakdown of what love is. Because of course, a lot of these parts in the network have no context for love at all. And so that's just one example. And it's probably hard for anyone to see this, so I'll just kind of give you a summary. There's another example of some of the things we were putting up on our wall. I will not be, I will not be a machine for the Lord that the network or Satan tried to make me. I will be love. And then scriptures again, from the sword of the Spirit that divides bone from marrow, the thoughts from the intents of the heart, as scripture says. His word really is key, as it says, in renewing our minds. And so that was kind of what this process looked like for us. We would, I would write it out. I would put it on the wall where we would see it every day. Yeah, once again, Ryan was enduring a flashback. And so sometimes I was going through flashbacks, sometimes he was. And so this was just a way to comfort one another. It can be really anchoring, to like touch is really anchoring when going through flashbacks. And so just one example of that, if you go to my Telegram channel, you will hear an audio recording of a flashback that I had that Ryan was helping me through, which is really intense and humiliating to share, but I think really important for people to hear as well. Okay, so Ryan was given a gift, quote unquote gift, from one of his handlers in the CIA. Just casually gave these to him. And they were comic books that were meant to activate his programming, but all they did was give us details and exposing it. And so Ryan was... he had a lot more Frankenstein's monster kind of programming than I had. Lots of horrific things that happened to him in laboratories, some of which I bared witness to, my altars bared witness to over the years. Jude 1 in the Bible talks about the lust for strange flesh, in reference to the days of Noah, that Matthew 24 talks about, which is a reference of Genesis 6 and the hybridization of man with fallen entities and beings. And Ryan was a victim of some of these experimentations in these underground Nazi laboratories. And I have images of some of the things that were in these comic books that verified our memories that I had of him even before I saw them, like tanks. I shared a photo about the kids or a poem I had written about the kids in the tanks on one of our other interviews, Emma. And so this one is full of like violence and blood and death and clowns and like satanic rituals. I'm not going to show them because I think they'd be probably really triggering for some. Although triggers can sometimes be helpful in helping us get to the root of what we need healing from. But we're just sitting here like, wow, this is real. Looking at these comic books, it's just part of the programming.
Oh, there's this one. There's the enlarged version of what we saw earlier.
Yeah. So while I was at the inn, we were receiving a lot of triggers that people would drop off for us in order to activate programming. Ryan and I both had daisy programming, and so a bouquet of daisies was dropped off for us. So daisies Daisy is named after like trance or dissociation. It's a reference to being in a daze. So it's just meant to continue to rerun software, keep amnesic barriers up, to keep these daisy alters compliant, submissive, quiet, and afraid. So it's meant, these daisies were meant as an intimidation tactic.
Were you both at the point where you could combat that once you saw it and not get triggered from it?
Sometimes yes, sometimes no. More yes than no. Man, there were times where we thought like there would be like a setback, but again, thankfully, here's what was so cool about what the Holy Spirit did, is that Ryan and I very seldom had out like the wrong parts together, if you know what I mean. So it was good. Like when I had like maybe a child altar come out or a specific altar come out, he had the right altar pulled up to help me manage it, to help speak truth to me, and to basically help. And then like vice versa. There were some times where there were like, oh boy, this is a clash. This is not good. We need to like take some space from each other, and seek Yah on what to do, because well, although this is painful, it's also very illuminating of our programming, and again exposing the programs that the enemy installed to cause a potential catastrophe. So it was a bit of a mix of both, I'll say.
And I love how you said earlier that this isn't just your story. It's not just Ryan's. We're speaking on behalf of a whole community of people. And I hope people can take that in, that this is a tactic not just used on Kadaya and Ryan. The network does this to many survivors, finds different ways to try to activate programming. And you can see how blatant it is, sending something directly to the home, violating their privacy and sending something to their home, their physical space, to try to destabilize the situation. And so you see just the importance of what we're talking about today and why it's so important. We need to support survivors so that when these things are happening, they have support and they have ways that they can navigate these situations that can put them in terrible danger if they're not prepared for it.
I just wanted to share a couple of these photos. So a lot of intel was gained through sketching that Ryan did. A lot of his parts would expose signs, symbols, names of different altars, reveal traumas. Some really horrific stuff came out that I'm not showing through some of his sketches. But those were parts of his soul crying out for help and exposing the truth of what had happened to him. And this one in particular has eyes and says, Ryan, the police are here. And you will hear very soon that the police were there. And we'll get into that in a little bit. Again, I was handed this by somebody who was trying to trigger my programming, because I had a lot of KKK affiliated cult trauma in both my family of origin and also the family that I married into as well, in Lyndon, Washington. And so this was just casually passed to me, and the person who passed it to me said, was actually a Black person who said, I really like this magazine cover. And it was not as smooth as I think that he wanted it to be, but I just simply took a picture of it and, moved on. I was not triggered, but it was meant to be. Again, another depiction of the type of sketches that Ryan was doing that just really shows the fragmentation of his soul. Like you can see, like they look fragmented. Someone would look at this and be like, wow, this is schizophrenic. But again, you look closely, you see occult signs and symbols. You see Delta written down over and over again. That's the Delta assassination programming. You'll see you'll see imagery that reflects horrible sexual abuse that happened, and a lot of demons and a lot of parts as well. There were often a lot of faces, so it just again displays the fragmentation of his soul crying out for help, because there's a lot of silencing programming that goes on where parts are not able to actually express events, right? And this is related to something often called message in a bottle programming that I discovered recently as a result of defecting. So drawing and sketching is actually a really good loophole to get parts to ventilate and express that they are there, and give clues as to some of the things that have happened to them. These are a few examples of Ryan's writing. So you'll see his style of writing changes depending on what part is writing. This is common. This happens with me as well. So you'll see this is a child part who is writing a letter of forgiveness to his grandma and grandpa for the things that they perpetrated against him. And I just found this, actually found this after we were separated, as I was going through his sketchbooks, and he had given permission to share whatever it was that I wanted. But it's really sad. It says, "Dear Grandma and Grandpa," what does it say? I'm
here.
You never wanted me. Dear Grandma and Grandpa, I'm here. Like, hey, I'm a fractured altar. I exist. I'm here. Dear Grandma and Grandpa, I'm here. You never wanted me, but sorry, I can't see. Oh, here it is. You never wanted me. I made it okay in life, except for the trauma of you selling me caused. But it's okay. And then I think there's another page. But it's okay. I'm leaving that here with you guys. Best wishes. I let it go. And so that was the effort of a child altar, just on his own writing. Like, he didn't share this with anyone. He didn't share this with me. I just found it in one of his journals. He never sent this. Maybe he had intended to mail it and then switched into another altar. It was really difficult for Ryan to make progress in any one particular direction to bring something to completion, because he was constantly being interrupted by switching into other parts. So you can see, though, that this is a writing of a younger part compared to, and just from the tone and the syntax and the way that it's written compared to some of the other pieces from his journal that you're also going to see, that I'm not going to read, but just to give you an example. So this is a list that we were given by the person who had handed me that magazine, a list of triggers in the form of movie recommendations. It says hunting party. We were both victims of child hunting parties in the woods. Silent night. Again, an intimidation tactic to our parts to stay quiet, not to reveal what we know or remember. Black light, Jurassic World Dominion and Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom, because there was a lot of reptilian stuff that had happened to both of us in these programming settings and rituals, and in the hybridization projects that they had attempted to yoke us with. And so we were given this list of movie recommendations, and we just looked at each other and kind of like winked and tried not to laugh, because it was so obvious to us that this was meant to trigger our programming. And of course, we didn't watch any of these movies, but there's just an example of some of the triggers that handlers can use. Another a depiction of the fragmentation in Ryan Leonard's soul. It says, "What have we done? They tried so hard to make me one of them." And you say like the Illuminati, you know, eye with the pyramid. Yeah.
And like you said, you can tell the different writing styles too. They're all very, very unique.
Mm-hmm. This was given to Ryan by the person who owned the inn that we were staying at before he passed away of cancer. As far as we understand, he did have cancer. He had I think it was pancreatic cancer. He had a bile bag and everything. Was very ill, but he had given Ryan this book called A Father's Kisses by Bruce J. Friedman, which is a revelation of the method, exposing a child trafficking syndicate through, but it was cloaked through the poultry industry. And you're going to hear in a video about Ryan using the euphemism of the poultry industry for child trafficking. And I read a little bit of that novel, and it's disgusting when you realize and you know what you're reading. And Ryan had believed that he had given him this book to basically confess and tell him the truth and help lead him out. We disagree a little bit on that. Ryan believes that he himself, I believe he was just trying to keep him programmed, but Ryan believes that he was trying to escape himself. And that's why he had allowed Ryan a place to stay at the inn. Another sketch of Ryan's fragmentation. You see at the bottom, it says poultry predators.
Bring that up a little bit bigger for people.
Mm-hmm. Yep, and you just can see the darkness also.
Yes.
Yeah. I would refer to this writing style as Ryan's core. I would say this would be his core personality writing. But we don't have to read it.
Very different writing style.
Mm-hmm. I showed this. I won't go into it in the last interview, but just to refer back to, I was talking about Jude 1 and some of the weird, freaky stuff they do in these laboratories. So this is a scar on Ryan's back that he has no memory or recollection of how that got there. But they had obviously done something. And then there is one lower, just out of sight, but for decency reasons, I didn't feature it here in the interview. Just below his tailbone, that appears to be a plug or a port of some sort. I'm not sure what they were plugging into him, but he has a lot of, and I have a lot of memories of him in these laboratories being put in these tanks. Lots of stuff was plugged into him, and they lived through hell. He lived through hell. So I'm not going to say a lot about these photos, but one of the things that was really fascinating to me about Ryan is how much his appearance would change between his identities, depending on who was out. His face would change so dramatically. It was like looking at a different person, different ages. His voice tone would change. Oh, did you guys hear the gunshot? If you see me duck, right? You might see me duck. Just kidding. But you'll see his face change. And you can just flip through them as I'm talking. Emma, thank you. Oh, I will pause here though. Okay, so you see his cat. So this is his cat that he instinctively named Ibis, because we were actually twinned together in Project Ibis. And he thought that he had spontaneously found this cat, who was a stray, this cute little kitten that he took in And he raised, when he was homeless in the woods after leaving the network for quite some time. But it turned out that the cat was bugged as a way to keep tabs on him. And so if you want to go to the next photo, so Yah revealed this.
Let me try to find it.
It's okay. So there's, so we realized the cat was bugged. And this was revealed through prayer. I just had discernment. I just knew there was something up with that cat. As sweet and precious as she was, there was something there. It was too good to be true as well, the way that he had found her. And she was a precious little cat, and she was comforting, and she kept him company when he was all alone, and so that was a gift. But we realized that she was a spitting image. As I was testing this, that I discerned from the Lord, of this project from the CIA called Acoustic Kitty. And you'll see eventually, I'm sure, as we make our way through the slideshow, a photo of the CIA website displaying their Acoustic Kitty project that began in the 1960s. And it is this exact same breed of cat, and it's an Abyssian cat breed, after the Abyss. And Abyss programming I've talked about extensively on my Telegram channel as a source for a lot of distress and affliction that a lot of us survivors are suffering, and how to overcome that. But she was bugged, and so we didn't know what to do, because he was so attached to this cat. And so I just left it with the Lord, and then she went missing. And so that was hard, right? So that was a cause for grief, but I had seen in the spirit that Yah had taken her by his own hand. Like, I saw her out roaming around where she normally does, and I just saw his hand somehow take her. I don't know what the details of that are, but thankfully Ryan nor myself, neither of us had to make that decision. We just prayed about it, and then she had disappeared.
Oh, she's so cute.
Yeah, there's Ryan in his Oscar the Grouch shirt. We both have Sesame Street programming and Oscar the Grouch part. And he didn't realize this until he instinctively brought this back from the dollar store, and I was kind of laughing because the eyebrows literally match his hair. Yeah. Just a couple examples of some of the things that Rudy, I mentioned, would post on Instagram earlier. So there's just one example. Another post on social media by Ryan as kind of like a veiled warning, but it was about judgment from the Most High. It wasn't about taking matters into his own hands. There was spilled wine, and it was about, the wine of the wrath of God that is poured out upon the wicked and those who do not repent. So he had said, TikTok. So these are all things, right, that people are observing that are meant to make him look crazy. And so you'll see a contrast between these photos of Ryan and some of his other ones. This is, I would say, one of Ryan's more core personalities. Ryan's nature is actually, he's a peacemaker. He's very gentle, very kind, very loving, incredibly selfless. Will give anyone he will give anyone his last dollar, who is in need. Like, birds will just come and land on him. Like, he's that kind of guy. And so, but I wanted to show these because you're going to see an incredibly stark contrast in his core personality and one of his alters coming up, who is Billy Syke, that I referred to, that they framed.
Let me find.
Yeah.
Where there was one.
Yeah, there's the spy cat. Yeah. There's a core part.
Let me find the others. There's one.
So that's I call him G.I. Joe. That's one of his CIA trained parts. Lots of super soldier skills. an insane ability to a body that just like self heals, can like inflate into like quite a statuesque muscular physique on very little food and very little exercise. So these are all things that were done through the manipulation of genetics and DNA in these super soldier programs. So this is an example of one of them. Like this personality would just like pull this snake off a tree, like no problem. So that can kind of give you some idea of the kinds of things that the enemy yokes with humanity, with the attempt to make us like beasts, right? It's that serpent seed programming, and so again, there's a reason that there's snakes are a theme. Different personality. That's Rusty. That's Ethan. Ethan's young. You could tell too, like just the way his eyes are more rounded. Again, an example of some of the social media posts that were being used to frame him as mentally insane or dangerous or a criminal. Oh, it's getting a little noisy in here. Hope you can hear okay.
Yep, I can hear you.
Okay. So there's Ryan and myself at an event. We were doing a little bit of espionage work, trying to talk to some very specific people. We did a lot of stuff like that there, which was actually kind of fun because we were training partners in the program. So we were able to use our skills and our training again, but this time for good, to try to uncover some things. And I'm not going to go into the details now because one of these figures is very high profile. And so I have to be discreet for the time being while I formulate what I'm going to do with the information, the video footage, and the audio recordings that I collected and that we collected. But that was at an art gallery event. It's just with me when I was in rough shape when I arrived at the inn. And so Ryan was looking after me and making me food. And this is how tired I was. But I felt so safe with him that I was able to sleep for the first time, just like kind of passed out wherever. And I've never been able to just fall asleep wherever before because I've had such hypervigilance in my system. And I've always tended towards insomnia. And so, again, like my nervous system knew that I was safe with Ryan and I was able to relax. There I was with, just on the couch. It's not a flattering photo, but it just, to me, that's like such a depiction of like the exhaustion of the survival state that I was in when I showed up at the inn to see Ryan. And I was really grateful that he nursed me back to life. It's a plate of ramen, by the way. Again, just the many faces of Ryan Leonard and how different he looks from identity to identity. We laugh at this one. Because he's in we call it the beta programming chair.
Oh.
That was just one of the chairs at the inn. And of course, there's nothing funny about any of this, but like we laugh sardonically so we don't despair and at the darkness all the time, right? Different one of his parts.
Another
and I think we kind of went through some of those, yeah.
Spy cats.
Yeah, there's your acoustic kitty spy cat. We couldn't believe how much it looked like Ibis.
I was going to say, it looks exactly like Ibis.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, she was a strange cat too. I've never seen a cat behave like her before. There's a photo of Ryan in a Dr. Seuss hat when he was young. We both had Dr. Seuss programming, which is part of the reason why we both became poets. And I've shared some of his poetry on the Telegram. And one of them is entitled When I Was 5, and it's such a beautiful poem about the redemptive power of Yeshua who came to him in his trauma, but it's really heartbreaking to read as well. Another example of Rudy mouthing off on Instagram. And these are the kind of things that tended to like turn people off. But if you knew what happened to him, it's understandable.
100%. Oh.
Yeah, this was the night that I first arrived in Tryon, North Carolina at the Pinecrest Inn, where he was presiding, where we ended up where I was squatting there as well. We were maintaining squatters' rights, contending in court for ownership of the inn, and Ryan was actually winning. He was crushing it. And that was very amusing to watch because he's actually brilliant in court. He's a total genius and he lives for that kind of thing, but it's very amusing and entertaining to watch him in that mode. And so, they had tried to evict us. They were formulating a false will on behalf of the plaintiff. It was just wild what they were doing. But again, it wasn't as much about trying to evict us, we realize now, as it was to trigger Ryan's social media posts so that they could collect things to then frame him for a crime and get rid of him and me once and for all. So this is Billy Psych. Just to give you an idea of how different his identities are. Now, like, Ryan is not actually violent, but the programming, when they push and they push and they push and they push, he kind of snaps and does get into this mode. But he just posts on Instagram, right? So like you can see, like he does these collages, right? Like he's got his cat in the background, right? Again, these are programs that they install to activate and trigger for the sake of violence, to make somebody look crazy. And you can see, I mean, look at it. You can see why it would work, right? But this is Billy Psych.
And then the cat. There's Ibis.
Yeah. I mean, he looks like he does look like a psychopath. Like we were laughing at this together because of what a psychopath he looks like. But yeah, the cat, yeah. Yeah, there's Ryan on the far left. Just so you can see, like, you don't get a Billy Psych out of nowhere. I mean, this is him, right? And this is what happened to him when he was a little boy. It's just horrific. It's just heart-wrenching what they put us through. Yeah. We just kind of flip through. Again, he's completely shape-shifting all the time. It was exhausting for me, but it was also incredibly entertaining.
Aww.
So this is where I'm gonna explain the programming that we discovered we were supposed to follow. Ryan was arrested. And that's why I'm no longer at the inn anymore. He was arrested for what they are claiming is aggravated assault of a deadly weapon and is facing a trial for a felony with a sentence of 3 to 7 years. So his Delta program was activated through months of harassment that I also witnessed. Have a lot of video evidence of this on his phone. I just haven't had the time to filter through all of it. But when it was showdown time, Ryan carries a knife with him at all times because of the harassment and the gang stalking and the violence that he has perpetually been enduring as a result of defecting from the network. There was an attack and a setup, just as we were anticipating, and we could feel it coming on the property at the inn, where he was intimidated, taken by surprise in order to activate his Delta programming. And when this event that we were anticipating and hoping would not prosper finally did, I attempted to commandeer the knife that he carries in his pocket, just in case, but he wouldn't give it to me. He agreed to maintain peace, but asked me to just please trust him. I wish he had given me the knife, but it was what it was. He didn't use the knife, but the fact that he had it on his person, and said some of the things that he had said and made some of the threats that he had made to these trespassers on our property. One of those people was a government employee, and this was by design in order to set him up for an arrest. Nobody died. That was their original plan. Was it somehow a setup for murder? There were a couple plans set into motion that, praise Yah, did not prosper, but enough happened to get him arrested. And I'm going to ask you, Emma, if you would show the clip of the event.
Okay, so let me see if this will play.
Do you actually want to know? Do you want to know the truth? I know you can handle it, but do you want it? We were made for this. We're a soldier, and we have a big job ahead of us. But it begins here. So again, I tell you, you have a home here. And I want to see your commanding officer try to get in between you and I. I'll put him in his place real quick. If you don't believe it, put it to the test. I'm willing to live. I'm in the mood. I know, man. I know. It's a mind fuck. But it's truth. And if I proclaim to anyone but Jesus Christ of Nazareth, and you call me the Antichrist and a liar, but I proclaim the one true God. And that's why I stand where I do. And I do it with ease. I do it without money. I do it without power. I do it without influence. I did it without friends. I did it with nothing. I lived in the woods for 5.5 months on meth man with nothing. No cell phone service. Not a single friend. If every person that had been a friend or family member that I didn't even fuck over, they would have been a liability to me in court. They were messaging me, telling me to go into the system. They were messaging me, telling me that I was deranged. And this is when I was living with nothing. Now I have the first part of my inheritance. And you see the lengths they go to try to snatch it back, but they have no power. They have no authority. They have none. And I'm going to prove it.
Left their inheritance.
Read.
Is he your father?
Read Coiner.
Is their father?
It's complicated. But if I talk about it, we're going to get into genetics. We're going to get into artificial intelligence, microchipping. We're going to get into underground bases, which you look at the New York Post. They'll tell you right now there's 246, something like that, bases, underground bases in the U.S. alone, many of them under the sea. I've been in them, and I'm telling you, they are hellscapes. They are nightmare lands you cannot imagine. They have created entire Disney worlds of hell. I was forced to rip a beautiful, innocent man apart with my bare hands at 9 years old. I ripped his face apart. I pushed my thumbs through his eyes. That was my 9th right in initiation with the TOTO, the Typhonian Order Templi Orientis. There are good men in military, police, fire, EMT, banking, communications, everywhere. There are good men and women that are on our side, but they have to know that the time has come and that God has come back for vengeance.
God that hurt people.
No, but He does protect them from predators. And you know that because you carry a gun on your hip and you know that's not a lightweight. You do everything in your power not to use it. So do I. I want you to talk to Sam. If I call him, will you talk to him?
Boy, I think you left.
He did. If I call him, not about me. I just want. It probably will be a very casual conversation. I'm going to say this is fat. He's a black cop in Tryon. He's the best cop here. I just want you to introduce yourself to him and say hi, and that's it. It's not going to be any kind of big
Well, I see his car every time.
Yeah.
Don't he live
Hidden Hill.
Oh, I thought he lived on top of the field.
No. That's Chris. That's Chris Stairs. Yeah. He's a friend too. I don't know.
Why don't you tell me what's going on? I heard their side.
What's your name?
Chief Hope.
I'm Ryan.
Nice to meet you.
Before I say anything else, I'd like to say this. What I desire here today is peace, not war. But one way or the other, I'm going to have my way. So I'm going to tell you what's going on. You're a law officer, right? So if you look at the Polk County records, Polk report, you'll see that they attempted to evict me from my own property. I went to court. The corrupted magistrate West, who honestly, I don't really hold anything against him. He just didn't want anything to do with it. He ruled in their favor, so I appealed it. Magistrate Johnson came in and upheld the law. I won.
You mean judge?
Yeah.
Not my.
That's right. Thank you. Correct. Judge Johnson.
501-505.
Good man. I know that you're in the spot.
What all has taken place today?
So we've been dealing with today. Today was a peaceful day, and then all of a sudden there was two men that neither of us recognized that were walking very aggressively through the property. They came up to the porch. I had just met my friend down here to get some cigarettes, and they came up to me with clipboards and attempts of authority to say that owns the property. And so I challenged them on that, and they wouldn't even provide identification. And I said, this is private property, and if you threaten me or my family or my property, I will kill you right now. And I won't hesitate to do it, and I mean that. You can put that on the record. And I know North Carolina state law. I know that's within the law. But I'm also operating according to a much higher standard than North Carolina state law, even though I operate within the bounds of it. I want you to know, man to man, that I respect you and I appreciate you. And I take a bullet for you. I'm not afraid of you. I'm not afraid of the law. But I want you to know where I stand. Don't take my kindness for weakness, please. I've killed a lot of people. I've worked with the CIA, the FBI. I've worked with a lot of different agencies. I didn't have a choice. I was a slave for 33 years. They took me as a baby. They put a fucking computer chip in my brain that didn't get deactivated until a couple days ago. And I'm telling you, nobody wants to integrate with AI. It is hell. She also, her legal name, she's of the royal family, the British royal family. She's also a defector from the the Canadian Central Intelligence Agency, and many others who were trafficked as children. I was used to my teenagers as an assassin, and then later on for all sorts of shit that I'm still figuring out. But I haven't had full access to my memories, so they've been coming back as I've lived here. I started out the Old Town landfill by Ziegler Field in Bamboo. Very confused. I worked my way up to the hill. Reed took me in. Reed was not what you would call an angel. Reed had to do a lot of horrible things to children even. He was let's say, not a poultry distributor, but someone that worked in the tech of the poultry distribution. When I say poultry, I mean children. But Reed also had a higher calling, and he served the Father like I do. So he left me this, and he set it up in such a way that this would all transpire and come to this point, so that all of us can make up our mind on whether we're going to be friends, enemies. I want to be friends, and I mean it genuinely. I got a house full of wine. I've got all the time in the world. You're off duty at 5 o'clock. Come over, let's talk about it over a bottle of wine, man. Seriously.
Well, just a kid. Let me finish talking to them.
Mm-hmm.
You later?
And the cigarettes, if you don't mind. After this, Fat, whenever you get off, come on by and I'll let you pick out your room. I let Kim and Jan pick out theirs yesterday. Kim and Jan, Kim Lawson. You know Jan, you arrested her, even though you were the only one that was nice to her. Like that.
You communicated threats in front of this officer.
I did.
Right here.
I did.
So what we're going to do, we're going to take you to jail for communication threats.
I think about it.
You just go ahead and sign up for it.
Buddy, I'm gonna find out something. You're either gonna get handcuffs or my dog's gonna bite you. Which one you want
I want to get hit by the dog.
to do? Get up.
But you gave me a choice.
If you don't get up, you're gonna get put in handcuffs, whether you like it or not. Is a chance whether you're going to the hospital first.
Okay.
Okay. Step back. Drop the fucking knife. Drop the fucking knife.
Drop it.
Drop the knife.
Drop
What
it.
do you think?
Q2C call. Watch crossfire. Watch crossfire. Put the knife down.
I got less to lose.
Drop the fucking knife.
Then you turn around and drop the knife. Turn around. Walk over here to my boys.
That was Jason. That was his Delta part that you saw. Ultimately, the scheme of the enemy partially prospered, and I'm going to explain why. I was devastated. Obviously, that was a traumatic thing. There was more leading up to this that I captured, and more following pertaining to a high-profile handler of a celebrity. So I have to, again, be judicious about how and when I share that. I may share it on the Telegram channel. You can link it below. That way, if I need to take it down, we don't have to take down the whole interview. But you can see again that this was a setup. I actually got a confession from this handler and you'll hear my double agent part at work as well, who's able to get a lot of information out of pretty much anybody. And I got a confession from this handler that this was planned, which is why he just so happened to be there when the police arrived. So Ryan was set up, he was triggered, he was activated. I wish that he hadn't had the knife at all. I wish he had just kept his mouth shut. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been arrested. But it was just enough. And I'm also going to allow you to listen. I'm going to also, sorry, totally just glitched out. 1 second.
No worries.
It was traumatic. I'm going to allow you to also hear a clip of Ryan sharing from jail that he what am I trying to say? It was really difficult. It was traumatic. I cried a lot of tears. I felt like somehow I had failed him in that moment. That maybe I should have fought harder to get that knife out of his hand. Um, Pleaded with him to just keep his mouth shut. I'm, of course, reviewing all of these events right after, retroactively trying to figure out if I was involved in handling him, in the potential activation of this. I'm crying out to Yah, saying, you told me I was the only one that could help him. Like, what's happened? You said that you had equipped me for this, but he kept returning me back to the truth that it was supposed to be worse. And ultimately, the plan and scheme of the enemy, which was to divide and conquer, is actually within Yah's hand, which was to separate us and overcome. Because Ryan and I had also reached a threshold, I think, in our ability to deprogram, where there were just certain things that we weren't going to be able to overcome and heal unless we were separated. So we got to the point where we needed to be to help each other deprogram to a point. And then it was time for us to be apart. I do not believe he belongs in jail. It's horrific. It's completely horrific. And we are really hoping for a miracle in this regard. But ultimately, Ryan is in agreement with me that this is something that is being used for good already and is going to be used for good. So we had been pressing in, as I said, through prayer and fasting for understanding, because we knew something like this was brewing to ultimately decimate us for life. And he had said to me at one point, we may, Kadaya, betray one another at some point or seem like we have, but promise me that no matter what they do or what any of our altars do, we'll hang on to the core. We'll hang on to the core. And you can hear again Ryan's core, who is very different from this Jason Delta part identity that you just listened on my Telegram channel. I share some audios of him so you can see who he really is and what he really is about. But as I'm preparing for this interview, Emma, last week I'm praying for more insight to contextualize everything that's happened with myself and Ryan, because Yah had asked me to tell his story. And so in preparation for this interview, I'm falling asleep last week, and I hear and I see in my mind Chanel number 6. And so I start back awake and I grab my phone and I Google Chanel number 6. And there is no product by Chanel called number 6. We know Chanel number 5. There is no number 6. But there's a novel called Chanel number 6. So I look up the plot and it reveals the program. Chanel number 6 is about a couple who are about to embark on a new lease in life after he recovers from a gunshot trauma. The characters' names are Chanel and Billy. Chantel and Billy Syke. I had mentioned I got to know my Chantel part while I was with Ryan. So this novel is about a Chanel and Billy. Billy Syke was the one that they were intending to set up, and we knew this. So this novel, written by an Australian author, reveals this Chanel number 6 programming that is a backup program, like a backup last resort program. That's why it's called number 6, Chanel number 6. It's a backup last resort program for those who are trying to escape. And I had it installed through strangulation, torture. many years ago, not actually with Ryan, but with like a General Billy part. And so this novel is about a couple, like I said, about to embark on a new lease on life after he recovers from a gunshot trauma. And just at the point of their healing and new adventure, he's framed for murder and imprisoned.
Oh,
Yeah.
no way.
And then in the novel, Chanel gets to work to prove his innocence, taking a ton of risks, breaking all kinds of rules to prove who done it. So here we are. Now, Chanel number 6 is also the name of an episode I discovered upon my research in a show called Scream Queens. And this show features a character who's played by Lea Michele, who has a split personality. And this is reflected in the Chanel logo, right? You have the 2 C's, so we have this flip side programming signal. And this is just confirmation. This is the program that we were supposed to follow. And we kind of are when you think about it, right? Like, so the enemy's intention to frame him for murder and implicate me, because in the novel, Chanel is taking a risk by helping to prove Billy's innocence. She may end up in prison for life as well. So it's confirmation, but like here I am now advocating for Ryan for a much lesser crime, which I don't think is valid. He didn't actually use that knife. He dropped the knife when they told him. You know, again, he looked to me, as you saw in the video, and asked what he should do. I believe he would have done that anyways, even if I hadn't said, yeah, you should just drop the knife, trying to just maintain calm and be a force of peace like Yah had told me to be. And so I'm thinking now about this, right? I'm like, okay, Yah had said if I didn't go, Ryan would be in prison for life or worse. Thank you for bringing that novel up, by the way. I just saw that. But of course, like I'm thinking, what in the world is going on? Like, what am I doing here? But the conclusion that I've come to is that the enemy's plan only partially worked because of Yah. Yah allowed just enough to prosper to expose this. And what Yah did with my Chanel or Chantel part and Billy, which is Kadaya and Ryan, what Yah ultimately did is important for the survivor community to understand, who are trying to heal. Thank you. There's a picture of Chantel and Billy. It's incredibly freaky to learn your own programming, and when you believe that you've been operating out of agency. And so after this happened, I was devastated, wondering, like, have I've somehow been party to the activation of Jason without my knowledge as just another handler? But because of what was supposed to happen and the fact that Ryan and I did need to part ways to continue healing, this was ultimately within Yah's will. Although we are going to continue to fight this sentence. Like this is, we're praying just a blip, and that he will get out, because it's not really a fair charge when you actually watch what happened, but it was enough to rope him in. So there does need to be action taken to release Ryan from this charge and get him to a place where he's not going to be re-traumatized and continue to be reprogrammed and can continue to heal. But Yah, he didn't reveal all of this to me before it unfolded. Like, he didn't give me the program name Chanel number 6, even though I've asked him for the details of everything that was going on before I went to see Ryan. I sought him for counsel while I was there. He didn't give this to me literally until last week. And I'm like, why? Why didn't you explain this to me? And he said, well, you kind of already knew, first of all, instinctively. And second of all, he said, I wanted you to trust in my sovereignty, and that despite your desire to know all of the details as you're deprogramming, which I always want, that my still small voice is enough, that I am using everything that the enemy means for evil for good. And it's not my intention to delete your identities. They are you, Kadaya. Billy is Ryan. Chantel is you. And he commissioned this identity. He recommissioned her. He didn't want to delete her. He wanted to recommission her for the purpose of this, for the purpose of what was about to happen, what could have happened, what didn't, and what's going to happen as a result of it, and how it's going to be used for good. And Ryan is the one that continues to tell me this. This is just going to backfire in the kingdom of darkness, because they did not count on our ability to make it through, to testify about it. He was supposed to be in jail, so was I. So Yah wanted me to learn, and he wants all of us to learn, that his higher ways are kind of foolishness to our understanding as people sometimes. And it's not, as he begins to deprogram us, it's not his will to delete our personalities, but to recommission them, right? And so when I'd asked Yah how to help Ryan tell his story, again, Chanel wasn't trashed. She was just like JL. She was redeemed. And so here we are, still advocating for Ryan, but for the sake of all survivors, for the sake of all captives who have been set up and wrongfully imprisoned because of these kinds of things, who have these parts that are trying to get help, that are trying to defect, that are trying to heal, that are trying to get free. But the network and the way that our system is set up is intentionally meant to prevent and to sabotage it. And this is the heart of Christ for a lot of people who are sitting in jail right now. And that's why he says to us that these are his sheep that we are supposed to feed. So here I am, still advocating for Ryan, but as a microcosm for all survivors, and just wanting people to know that Yah will use lingering program for good while he works through the layers of dismantling it. And when, like, our identities, so they're created for their purpose by the enemy, but when we walk in faith and obedience to Christ, he uses them as weapons against the adversary and for his kingdom. And so we're not actually discouraged by what happened, neither Ryan or myself. We're remaining positive. We're remaining optimistic that Yah will continue to do what he's done with us the whole way along and overturn every attack, every sabotage, every trap that the enemy has thrown at us. He's going to overturn it and make the enemy regret it. Ultimately, he's done this all the way along. There's no reason he's not going to stop now. There was supposed to be a framing of murder, as we understand from the Chanel programming, and so the worst did not happen. But it's still not right, and I still believe that it is unjust and it is corrupt what has happened. And people will have their different opinions after they watch the arrest footage, and that's fine. This is ours, and this is our story. But I just hope that gives hope when progress feels slow, or if it's bewildering, that Yah's doing more than we may understand, so that we'll walk in childlike faith and look back and be impressed with him, and he'll get the glory. And childlike faith is what creates a lot of programming. Belief in faith of the lies and illusions and delusions that the abusers and programmers tell us when we're being fractured through trauma as children. So how much more so is childlike faith necessary for us in our deprogramming? And so that's why a lot of information has been withheld from me from the Most High until later, when I could look back and see that it didn't matter, that his hand was sovereign over me, over my circumstances, regardless. And scripture says that unless you have faith like a child, you cannot enter the kingdom of heaven. And so it's been a humbling process for me, a difficult process, humbling and difficult for both myself and Ryan. But this is just how it's worked. And so here we are, Emma.
Can you share a little bit too? I think it's just incredible how, given the circumstances, Ryan's in jail wrongfully. He shouldn't be there, yet he's ministering to people there. Can you just share a little bit about what he's doing while he's there as well?
Well, you shared my phone number around, so I get phone calls from a lot of inmates who are in need of ministry, which is kind of neat. People are getting dreams, as Ryan's been praying from them from the Lord, that they need help interpreting. And then I've been sharing them on my Telegram channel with a just beautiful community that Yah has brought together there. And people have been rallying around to send these prisoners Bibles and books and to pray for them. Some of them even were able to get released, which was not supposed to happen. And this is what we live for, right? This is the gospel. He says this, he's all about healing the brokenhearted, binding up their wounds, proclaiming freedom to those who are bound, loosing the chains and opening the jails of those who are imprisoned. This is the gospel and ministry of Jesus Christ. These are the kinds of people that his spirit is roaming for. These are his lost sheep. It's not a bunch of stuffy looking people in buildings that they call the church. It's people who are sitting in these prisons. It's the homeless person on the street. It's the recovering it's a drug addict that needs help. It's you, it's me, it's survive. This is just his beautiful, incredible heart for the broken, and like the mercy and the love that he has for the broken has been so profound to witness. As one who has been filled with his Holy Spirit to then share within his heart and experience his mind. And so, yeah, Ryan is tenacious. He's doing well. He's desperately wanting to get out there. If you want to follow the Telegram channel, I'll share the details of his court proceedings that are coming up. He passed his psych evaluation. It was a forensic evaluation, very long, very extensive. He passed it with flying colors. So he is able to defend himself in court coming up, which is what he intended to do. He's hoping to be released. He doesn't want to be transferred to a mental institution just for the sake of lowering his sentence. He had agreed to work with a public defender, but the public defender would not believe his story. He told him he believed that he was schizophrenic, and that the best he could do was maybe lower his felony sentence of 3 to 7 years in prison to a 2-year sentence based on mental incompetency in a mental institution for inmates. And this is what they want to do, right? Just to try to reprogram you. And of course, we want neither one of those outcomes, but we're ultimately just trusting in the justice and sovereignty of the Most High. And we know that Yah can continue to deprogram, can continue to heal, even in the midst of a place of captivity. He can set our souls free spiritually. And so we're just ultimately trusting him. And, it's funny, like this program that we were set to follow, Chanel and Billy. We laugh. We can genuinely laugh about it on the phone. Like, even with him being in jail, and we joke about, like, what about parts of me? What if parts of me were handling him? And there's just so much love and grace and forgiveness, and the miracles that have happened in the midst of what we've been going through, that, like, we just don't even care, because we know that we're on the way out. And neither of us have been posing as like a healed, deprogrammed example for people to follow, but we've just been like, hey, we're getting out of here. Who's coming with us? And so it was actually Billy Syke who set up the Telegram channel for our community. And that's where we're sharing photos of our identities so that people can learn about specific programs and how to recognize them within themselves and others, how to break them. I go through tripwire programming, backwards programming, black hole programming, Lyme disease, Epstein-Barr, Alzheimer's. All of these programs are a part of this ship in a bottle programming. I'm releasing songs to minister deliverance from the Most High, which has been just such a grace. There's support, like, it's a community effort. It's not just the Kadaya show. It really does take a village. We all have different puzzle pieces, skills, and gifts that we need to come together and rally together for and learn together. We have a 24/7 prayer altar going, which Yah has been moving mountains since we began. We have a Bible study, we have video chats. So, like, come and join us, because what Yah is doing right now it's like a new thing. And we are just in awe of how he is answering and how he is setting us free and others free. So please make sure to come over and say hi there.
And that's at the Song of the Lamb, Second Exodus on Telegram. And I'm going to have that below. And she's right. I pop in there. I'm not on Telegram a whole lot. I just have trouble keeping up with every social media platform. I'm just trying to do my best to post here and there on all of them. But when I go on to Kadaya's page, and I share a lot of her stuff on to my page as well, the community efforts and the comments are just amazing. It's incredible watching survivors come together and compare notes on programming, on things that they've learned, on just ministering to each other and being there and having an open arms and heart for one another. It's a really, really beautiful community that you've created, Kadaya, and the information there is amazing that you're posting, and then also other people are adding to in the comments. And I want to share to you about how people can help Ryan. But before we do that, I just want to sort of have you take a moment and just go through the charges. So initially, you guys were squatting at a property that Ryan was fighting for and was winning that was going to be yours. This was why the cops showed up to begin with, quote unquote, even though this was a setup. That was sort of their in on why they were showing up to begin with, was to use that as a way to come in on your property and try to activate Ryan, correct?
Yes, correct.
Could you just share a little bit about just the timeline so people can just see how this all worked and what Ryan was trying to accomplish getting this property, and then what he's being charged for now?
He is being charged with aggravated assault of a deadly weapon based on the footage you just witnessed, even though he dropped the knife, because he had made a death threat to the locksmiths that were sent on the property to change the locks on some of the buildings that we were working to tidy up and clean up. One of those buildings, I'm going to say unfortunately, was full of wine. So you saw Ryan drinking it, like the Big Lebowski on the porch there with his slippers and his cigarettes. And so that's a trigger as well, for some of these parts, the part specifically that you witnessed. But so So that was the charge based on what you saw, of 3 to 7 years, and that's a felony. He's never been charged with a felony before, so it's quite serious. And the confrontation with the group of men that came to try to change the locks on us was from somebody who does not actually own the inn. But Ryan, has, depending on the personality you're talking to, he has some different perspectives on what's going on at the inn. And one identity is just like, oh, this is just a playpen, right? This is just a playpen where they put me, to kind of give me a war to fight, and keep me occupied, until they figure out what to do with me next, which is ultimately to frame me for murder, or set me up to commit something like that, which is not his intention. But there's always that fear, like when we're programmed, do we have identities, the berserker programmed identities that we're not aware of, that they may try to trigger. But again, his desire is the same as mine, is just to continue to operate in the peace and the hope of Yah, and just trust him with those things. It's really all that we can do.
Is there a chance still that the inn can be awarded to Ryan if these latter charges from the aggravated assault work in his favor and he's able to eliminate those? Is he still able to fight for the inn, or is the inn no longer able to go to you and Ryan?
I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know yet. The person who was arguing and was producing an outdated will that it belonged to him had a big falling out with the previous owner. And Ryan was the previous owner's only friend as well. And so that's actually him. Yeah, so I'm sorry, got it.
Oh, no way.
Yeah, I don't think if I answered it, I would say, hey, what do you want to say? But I don't think that it would. I think it would probably stop our call. But he understands the interview is today. He's probably just wasn't sure it went on as long as it did. Because they only get a short amount of time to make a call when they're able to. He's on 23-hour lockdown every day. Okay.
And that's where I think you need to keep going on that vein, because that's right, that it's not a melodrama about you and I. That's a microcosm of the macrocosm. The truth is like, this is an image of what survivors have been dealing with for a long time, and it's escalating. But the problem is that survivors are all fending for themselves, hiding. They think they can hide, and it's pathetic. I understand it because, after a while, with enough harassment, enough threatening, then the only thing you want to do...
You have 1 minute remaining.
...find a hole and crawl into it to be left alone. Let me call you right back so that resets.
Okay. Oh, Papa, please grant wisdom.
Paid call from Ryan Leonard, an incarcerated individual at Polk County Jail, with telephone service provided by Paytel. Communicate for English, press 1. To accept this call, press 3 now. To block. This call will be recorded and is subject to monitoring at any time. You may begin speaking now.
Okay, so hopefully the echo is not too bad in here.
It's good.
So, you've got a lot of disparate lone wolves who are barely finding any kind of community or tribe, barely finding any kind of help from those who are not survivors, and finding very, very little help from those who are. Because those who are usually have very little to give. and they spend most of their time hiding, trying to keep a low profile, or else trying to build up a following or write a book or whatever it is they think is going to bring them some income. And on top of that, you've got a lot of people who are, I mean, frankly, just selfish, or they want attention. And it's pathetic. It's the most marginalized group to ever live. And I don't say that sparingly. That's a big statement, but you're talking about people who have been, in most instances, from birth or from the womb, engineered, programmed, tortured, raped, and marginalized, where their entire life is completely controlled. They're cut off from access to finances and all the things that are normal for everyone else if they fall out of line. And yet they will not come together and work as one body. And many of them, a huge percentage of them, claim to be part of the body of Christ, of Yeshua. Yet they do not live it. They live in fear, they live in scarcity, they live in timidity. They hold on to their religion and they bicker over it. You've got the Old Testament covenant Torah types, and they're right about so much, but they do the same thing, and they're more focused on the law. And then you've got those who, if they're not survivors, but they're sympathetic to the cause, well, I'm not even going to say if they're sympathetic. Most of them are like the priests or the Pharisees or the self-righteous ones that walk by the Samaritan who's bleeding out on the side of the road. Except in most instances, it's not a Samaritan, it's an angel. It's someone that's actually far more righteous because they've been carrying their cross for decades, while the others have been living they've been living a good life, more or less, or they've just been going through the normal things that everyone goes through in this life if you're not a part of government-controlled mind control. I mean, government-sponsored mind control, satanic ritual abuse, and all of that. All that to say, there needs to be a serious infusion of courage, and that's only going to come through spirit. And there needs to be a surge of generosity and charity. And to tell you the truth, those who are not afflicted like we are, those, and I say we, not just Kadaya and myself, but those who are not survivors of government-sponsored mind control, satanic ritual abuse, constant harassment, if they think that they have something, everyone sees the writing on the wall with where we're at in the world. Everyone's trying to hold on to a nest egg. Everyone's trying to secure themselves something. But those who do not give what they have, whether it's much or little, even that which they think to have saved for themselves will absolutely be taken from them. And there will be no compassion. There will be no mercy. There will be no pity for them because they've done nothing to help those who are most oppressed, those who are the fatherless, the widow. And if that is not enough to rally survivors, even for their own good, because look, I'm saying all this from a detention center under 23-hour lockdown, and I've been here today, Mike's 40 days. I didn't hurt anybody. I didn't steal anything. I pulled a knife out in front of police officers after two armed men showed up on my property at 9 o'clock in the morning, yelling at me aggressively. I didn't pull a knife out before the police got there, and I didn't attempt to strike anyone with the knife. Yet I got hit with a felony, assault with a deadly weapon against a government official, and communicating threats. Even though this is, and I'm fully aware that my actions are considered uncouth or belligerent to many, but they have no idea what led up to this. They don't know about the stalking or the harassment by the police and by the community, which Kadaya, I suppose, is going to show people a little bit of, but it was a tremendous amount. And that's after being chased out of society for almost a year, living in the woods for 5.5 months with no money, no family, no friends, no food for much of the time, going 5 days in the woods without food or even electrolytes, having insane flashbacks to make it almost too difficult to walk to get water from a spigot. And it goes on and on. Like, this has been building for a long time, and I've been very, very loud. I painted a bullseye on my back, and I'm not sorry I've done so, and I'm not going to stop doing so, because someone has to do it, and everyone else is running away, and then they don't want anything to do with you if you are putting a bullseye on your back, because they're like, oh, just sit down and shut up so you don't bring more attention to us, not realizing that, like, there is no hiding from these people, because you're trying to hide from the prince of the air of this world. You can't do it. And you're not supposed to. You're supposed to be standing up in strength. Where are the spines? This is a field of bones, and unless there is an infusion of spirit by the willingness of these people, there will be no, I shouldn't say there will be no, because we know there will be. But you're going to miss out on it if you are one of the ones I'm speaking to. And I'll say this, there is nothing man can do to you when you are anointed. They can throw you in a prison, they can try to take your life, but as Yeshua said, no man takes my life from me. And I will double down on that and say, not only does no man take my life from me, but no man takes my freedom from me. And I am not here unwillingly. I came willingly. I put that knife down, and I came willingly. And I told them when they arrested me, I'm here to prove a point, and I am, and much more. And although my body might be incarcerated, my spirit, my heart, and my mind are as free as they were when I was living in the woods. And in many regards, this is not as hard as living in the woods, completely cut off from the world. I mean, completely cut off. But there is action that needs to be taken, and it needs to be taken immediately. And Kadaya has been a rallying point and a rallying cry from before the time that I met her. And if you can't, I mean, I was told, this is ground zero. She represents ground zero. I represent ground zero. We're not trying to pretend to be those who have suffered the most or those who have done the most or anything like that. But we are the instruments that have stood up and have been chosen. And if you claim to be that also, then where are you? Why haven't you been in touch with her? Where are all these other survivors who, I don't understand it. Where are you? Why won't you even contact her? She wants to be contacted by you, just like I did. There's really no excuse. So unless you band together, this is the playbook they're going to use against you. And don't expect anyone to come to your aid when that happens if you haven't come to the aid of others. They're going to either get you involuntarily committed like they tried to do to me. I just got cleared for my second psychological evaluation, this one a forensic eval. Or they're going to incarcerate you. And it doesn't matter if you don't actually do anything. They'll make it up, or they'll harass you until you slip and say something, and they'll say, you communicated a threat. And you'll be communicating a threat against somebody who's been threatening you in word or in deed or both for months or years after your former family or your families, or after your families have stalked you, after they've ruined you financially and ruined your reputation and taken away all of your assets. It's the playbook for all of us. So unless you get the picture and you come together and you stop bickering over your differences and you stop with your superiority complexes and you stop trying to be celebrities or write your book and get it out there, until you all come together and serve one another, you can expect this to happen to you. You're going to get picked off one by one, and it's going to be no one's fault but your own. That's really what I want to say, because that's been burning in my heart for the past 28 months. Like, I have been on a mission for 28 months, and at first, I was invisible, utterly invisible. I've actually been succeeding in my plan because I'm not invisible, not to the agencies, and now even somewhat to the public. And that was my goal. That's why I've been so loud. That's why I've been uncouth, and that's why I've said very unpopular things, because no one else is doing it. I mean, there are some who are getting out and saying some things, but you could relegate so much of it to entertainment. Those, and then. Yeah, I don't want to cast aspersions to those who have stood up and have put their voice out there and who have helped me by doing so. But I'm saying, even if that's you, you're not done. If you're not in the fire, then you're not a threat. And if you're not in the refiner's fire, you're not going to shine forth as pure as gold when this is said and done. This is it. You either stand up or you get accounted for nothing. You get accounted for nothing. You get swept up with everybody else. And if you're not a survivor, I mean, you should be pouring out everything you have to those who are. Everything. The fact that there are many, many of you that have a house with an extra bedroom, who have an extra car, who have an extra $25,000, $50,000, $100,000 in the bank account, and survivors who don't have anything and they're homeless or they're living in their car and they can't even afford to get their car fixed, and you're not doing anything to help them, then I pray that your bank accounts get looted. I pray that you find yourself in the exact same position and worse than they are, and that you do not get out of it. because it is despicable if you call yourself followers of Christ, especially if you call yourself followers of Christ. It is despicable. I mean, I have no tolerance or patience for it, and I'm going to call out two communities, because these communities they've got so much right, they've been faithful in so many ways, yet they will jump over the person lying on the side of the street if they've got SRA stamped on them. And one of those communities helped me more than not communities, but ministries helped me more than anything I could think of in my former life before I came out of mind control. And that's the Wild at Heart ministry with John Eldridge and everyone else there. And they have been so faithful. Yet where is that community? Where is that community when you have tens of thousands of those like us who have absolutely no advocates in this world, who get stripped of absolutely everything, and we can't even, it's mind-boggling that you can get so much right and be so righteous in so many ways, and yet completely ignore those who are in your own country, in your own land, who are the most marginalized people imaginable. And then you've got these big entertainment-type podcasts that have grown big communities like Blurry Creatures, where they're fully aware of this reality, but they'll barely touch it with a 10-foot pole. And I've reached out to both of these ministries numerous times, and I'm not the only one. And what I get back is I get the response of the Pharisees or the Sadducees or the Levites walking by the Samaritan on the side of the road who's beaten and bloody, and they want nothing to do with him. And that's without even asking for, help. That's not even being like, hey, help me, come rescue me, come give me money. No. That's just trying to make contact. Like, hey, I've literally got no one. My family is turned against me. They're trying to get me incarcerated. They're trying to get me involuntarily committed. I just need an advocate on my side, a responsible member of society that can say, hey, no, this person is not a bad person. This person's not crazy. And if you're not doing that for us, then you are in for such a rude awakening, and none of us are going to do anything to help you, and we're going to be the only ones who can when it comes to that. That's really what I've wanted to say for well over a year, I guess closer to 2 years.
And who was it that you wanted to thank?
I want to thank everyone in your group that has helped me by putting money, $10, $20, $30, $40, $50 into my canteen so that I can not be hungry 24 hours a day in here, and I can talk to you on the phone, and I can get a pair of socks and a shirt because everything in here costs money. Listen, this place sucks. This is a 23-hour lockdown. I spent the first 30 days of it in 24-hour lockdown. It's like being in a max security prison. You have to pay for everything here. If you're waiting on a prison sentence here, you are dying to go to prison. You've never seen people so excited to go to prison in your life until you come to Polk County Department of Corrections, Detention Center, not corrections. And so I want to thank them, those who have been with me in spirit and who have put forth whatever they can financially. But both ways have been felt tremendously. Those who have been praying and those who have been supporting Kadaya in any way outside of this have my heart. And I'm telling you, I am loyal. So when they need it, they're going to have help. And I'll make sure of it. But if you're taking advantage, or you think to take advantage,
You have 1 minute remaining.
or her kindness or her grace, you've got a rude awakening coming, and I'll deliver it personally. And I mean that. I will deliver it personally. So thank you all. And there's so much more I could say. I am almost out of time. I could call back one more time. I got 10 more minutes, and then I have to go back to my cell. Let me call you back real quick.
Okay.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay. I also want to thank those who have sent books. That makes such a difference. Otherwise, you get 3 minutes to look through a book cart once a week, and most of the titles are garbage. Fortunately, God has me, and so He's always had 2 books in there for me every week, which has really been incredible. But those who have sent books has been so appreciated. And I want to say this: you you can look on the website. Kadaya can give you the website, and you can find inmates here. There's a few that are only Spanish speaking. My cellmate right now doesn't speak any English. Really, really beautiful guy from Guatemala. Just awesome guy. He shouldn't even be in here at all. He had 3 beers and didn't speak English, so they really took advantage of him. Driving, I mean. Anyways, no English, so if you're in 23-hour lockdown and you have nothing to do, you have nothing to read, I mean, that's a different kind of punishment. You don't understand until you've done it, and you're hungry the whole time unless someone's sending you money so you can get canteen. And so you can go on the website and you can find Latinos that are in here, and I would just go ahead and assume that they probably don't speak English, and if they do, they probably don't read it very well, and they would love a Bible in Spanish, and then they would love to have books. You can have 2 books at a time, and then they can either donate those to put them on the cart for someone else, or they can keep them in their personal property. But don't just send nothing but religious texts, please. Like, think about yourself. If you've got nothing to do for 23 hours of the day, maybe you sleep for 4 of those hours, you've got nothing to do except read. You don't want to just read a bunch of religious texts. A Bible, and then send good novels. Novels, biographies, memoirs, that sort of thing. Kadaya has kind of been making a list, I think. But I want to, since I spent so much time kind of reproving those who sit on the sidelines and do nothing except whine or try to get attention or sympathy for themselves, I want to also really, really say that my appreciation is with those who have been with me and with Kadaya in spirit, because this is not, like I said, this is not just a melodrama about her or I, but this is a microcosm of the macrocosm of all survivors. This is what we're up against. If you're a threat, if you are a genuine threat, they will come after you like they've come after me. Like they've come after who? Nathan? You know, that he gets harassed all the time. Like they've come after so many of us. I could name people all day. Come after so many of us. But yet, those of us that they've come after, like I spent the past year and a half or more trying to really build relationships with other survivors, and I'm telling you, they are the flightiest bunch of people, and they don't have an excuse. I mean, sure, we all have an excuse, but they don't have an excuse from me, because I wasn't spared any of this. Like, I have dealt with all of it, just like Kadaya has, just like you have, and yet here we are standing up. Kadaya doesn't even have a home to her name. She is having a hard time even finding legal representation to get money that is owed her, and then has to deal with petty squabbles with people, or people that are butthurt because they don't get what they want right away, a bunch of big babies, and I'm not talking about her group, but other people that she's been dealing with, and it's a waste of her energy, and I'm telling you, like, the time for this nonsense is over. Like, she's not going to tolerate it. I'm definitely not going to tolerate it, and the Most High God whom we serve is not tolerating it. You're going to get called out to the carpet, and that's the least of what's going to happen. So I really suggest people that you get your act together and you start practicing what you preach. And if you're a survivor, you start thinking like, hey, you know what? It's time to stop running and hiding. It doesn't work anyways. It's time to start living boldly. It's time to take a stand for what you believe in instead of trying to just slide through the margins. And if you're not a survivor and you're not doing everything in your power to aid those of us who are this ostracized and oppressed and marginalized, then I've already told you, but like, what needs to be happening?
Yeah, I was thinking about when I was going through this, I was asking Abba, like, why, where is the church? And he said, I have sent you and survivors like you to sift my church.
Yeah,
that's right. And I'm like, oh, well, this is fun.
You know, and it's a lot like industrial gold mining, where it's like, I don't know, where they go through like 40,000 tons of dirt an hour type deal or a day, and you might get a few ounces of gold out of it. Like, that's where we're at. Like, there's billions, 6-7 billion people on the planet. I think you've got an estimated 2 billion, 3 billion that claim to be Christian, and of that, we're looking at, I mean, how big is your group? Because that's kind of what we're looking at as far as proportion goes.
Small.
It's going to be the minority of the minority of the minority. Because even those who are like, they're good and all, but they have a form of godliness. Like, once dealing with our whole, since from the time that we wake up for mind control, like as soon as they feel even a little stiff wind from that, like they're gonna fold like cheap chairs, and that's gonna be it for them. So it's like we're not wasting our time with those people, and they're already under judgment. The world is already under judgment. It's been under judgment since for the past 2 years. This April, 2 years, it's already been under judgment, and it's gonna get a lot worse. And if you can't see that, if you can't turn on your television or look at the news headlines for 10 seconds and see what's going on, then I mean you're so blind and you're such a fool that like everything that happens to you, like there's no one to blame except yourself. There will be no one to blame, and no one's going to lament your loss. I can promise you that. Like no one's even going to notice you're gone because your life has been spent on yourself. It's been an utter waste. And there's no boo-hoo about that. There's no being politically correct about everyone's life is worth something. No, not everyone's life is worth something. Your life is either worth something or it's not. And if you've spent it and all your substance on yourself, guess what? Your life isn't worth shit. And when it's gone, no one's going to remember you, let alone mourn for your loss. And there's a lot of people that fit that bill. And you can go back to John 3:16. For God so loved the world, he doesn't want that for anyone. But then at the end of Revelation, you've got, let those who are evil remain evil because the days are short and he's coming. And the Spirit of the Most High is already upon the earth. And if you don't see him in his violated sacred ones, survivors, and all the oppressed and marginalized throughout the world, then you will not see him. And if you can't be led by a child, then you have no place in the kingdom of God. And you will have no place in it. So like all of you people in your ministries and in your churches and in your comfortable lives with your mortgages and your 2.5 kids and your 3 cars and your college funds, like you're about to watch all of that get wiped away. And you're going to have what's left dependent on how generous you've been, how charitable you've been, and how much you've been the hands and feet of Christ to those who have not had anyone in their corner. And I promise you've overestimated your generosity. All of you have.
The remnant is a residue, right? So, welcome to the threshing floor.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
And if you're afraid to lose your life, then you've already lost it. I mean, if you're not willing to put your life up, then who are you kidding? Like, why did you sign up to follow somebody who let himself get tortured to death when he could have put it to an end at any point? Like, this is, Those who seek to save their life will lose it, and those who lose their life for his sake and for the sake of their brothers and sisters, they will find it. And I can tell you, for me, there's nothing. I can tell you, I do not fear death whatsoever. It would be so much easier for me to just get lined up against the wall and shot, to get lethal injection or anything, than to sit in prison or jail. Like that's always how I've felt. For me, freedom was everything. Yet I'm in here, and I'm telling you, I don't regret being in here. I'm not even sorry I'm in here. It's been a productive time. It's been a productive time. I've had 3 different cellmates, and it has been, let me just tell you, I'm going to save that, but it's been wonderful. And then those who have been, we've already seen just in a short amount of time, the amount of prayers that have been answered for some of these people, and just the good things that I've experienced as well since I've been in here has been just incredible. It's been amazing, and it's been, we've got all the odds stacked against us. I mean, the town that Kadaya and I were living in, Tryon, North Carolina, the entire town was against us, and the amount of harassment. There's no way she can do service to what we actually experienced and what I experienced for I don't know how long, 8 months or something before she got there. I mean, we're talking the amount of it was literally like living in Gangstalkville Village. Like it was just all day, every day. Like you have to have fun with it. I had fun with it. I had a blast with it, and we both learned to have fun with it. But I mean, the amount of I'm kind of starting to sound like a broken record at this point. I'm just really grateful that there still is a remnant, and that, like Ezekiel 37, this valley of bones, there's a spirit moving.
You have 1 minute remaining.
There's a breath moving through it, and they are putting on flesh and sinew. And like Gideon's army, we are not going to be many, but like the army from Joel, there will be none like us in the past nor in the future. And that's happening right now. We don't need hundreds of thousands, tens of thousands, or millions of people. It's a small percentage of us, and great things are going to happen through us. But guess what? Like, the process is really, really difficult. If you're not, I mean, I shouldn't say it's difficult. Yeah, it is. It's difficult. The sifting is difficult, but His grace is sufficient. I love all of you that have been there, and especially continue to remain there for Kadaya, remain there for me, and remain there for those who you don't even know. She'll keep you updated, but stay in her group. And I love you all, and I love you, Kadaya.
I love you too. We love you.
I feel it.
Goodbye.
One of his former handlers as well, leading up to this, who basically tried to quit. And I was like, been trying to dismiss you for a while, bud. Like, glad to, because you can clearly see you're failing here. And he's stressing out and he's spiraling, right? He wasn't allowed to, obviously, and wasn't able to. And so he had to then participate in this scheme to ultimately activate Ryan and set him up for what ultimately happened. I don't know what's going to happen about the inn, but I know that Ryan is very eager not to return to Tryon at all if and when he gets out. And I think that's really good. I think too much has happened there. He needs a change of pace, a change of scenery to help him with the rest of his defecting process. And so I think he's probably content, as I am, to let it go and move on to whatever Yah's plan is next.
And for these charges, the aggravated assault and or anything else that they bring up, the worst case scenario is 7 years. Best case, if things go well, is 2 years if he gets into a mental institution, which we don't want that either. And then the very best situation is that we can get him out very soon and he doesn't have to serve any more time than what he already has. Is that correct?
Correct. Yeah.
And so what does he need and you to support this? Is there a bail amount that needs reached? Is there money that we can donate to him in the meantime before he goes to court to simply be able to purchase things that he needs, like food and different things while in jail? What ways can we support, and what ways can people step in and help?
His bail is set for $100,000. But if he has 10% of that made, he is able to be released, but he may not be able to get bail after his court date ruling has been established. And so we're waiting to see what's going to happen there. 10% of his if 10% of his bond is met, which is $10,000 at this point in time, he could be released. And so I'm going to post some links below. You can donate to his commissary, which will enable him to make phone calls, afford canteen food, get basic needs at the jail. Yeah, he has to pay for everything himself: toothbrush, blanket, undergarments to stay warm, and it's not cheap. And the food that they serve is like basic calorie minimum requirement. So he'd like to get some more calories so he's not feeling hungry all the time, so that he can do some push-ups in his cell and kind of do that kind of thing. So I'll post the link to his commissary and information below, and then also his Cash App, which I have the ability to also transfer to his commissary. He would love to get letters. I'll post the address as well. And I'm also going to post the name of the magistrate, the name of the judge, and the plaintiff as well, with some contact information for those who might want to apply some pressure, because the court of public opinion is very powerful. So to be able to write letters or emails and express basically that what has happened to Ryan is real. He's not making it up. It just takes a little bit of research to understand that mind control is a real thing. Like, you can even read about it in mainstream newspapers. It's all verifiable. It's just that people don't want to actually see it and just easily dismiss somebody as crazy. So I'm going to post those, have you post those things below. Emma, thank you so much for asking. There's something else. What was it? One thing I want to say about Ryan, as far as clinging to the inn is concerned, I had no particular attachment to that place, but Ryan did. One of the reasons is because that was all that he had. And he had lost everything. Everything that he's ever had has been taken from him as a result of the return of his memories and trying to leave the network. He's been punished so severely. All he's ever wanted was a place to call his own, a home, a family, and a community, and to provide protection and refuge for the orphan, for the widow, for any survivor who is in need of help. That is his life's mission, to help survivors, because he went so long with people shutting the door on his face, being misunderstood, judged, and basically betrayed and turned away. And so he's kind of just has wanted to just channel this into a project so that he can make sure that this stops. And so I understand why he was contending so hard for this inn. And I know and I believe and I saw through the spirit of God before I came down to see Ryan, that his ultimate purpose for Ryan as a leader, and he will fulfill his mission. No matter what. It doesn't need to be at the Pinecrest Inn. I mean, that's a historic heritage site, right? And so it may not have been ideally the best place for us in the middle of a town anyway to run something like that. But I understand why it was so triggering for him to continue to be under the threat of eviction and have somebody take basically like his last hope. But thankfully, because God is his true and only unwavering, unmovable hope, he's doing okay. And he's not been devastated, and he's remaining as optimistic and tenacious and hopeful as ever.
And I'm so grateful that he has you on the outside to advocate and to give him a voice and to share the truth about what happened to him. And with that being said, we also need to support you. I know this episode we've really focused on Ryan, but I would just like to ask you before we close out, do you have any updates on your children? And then what can we do to help support you so you can keep ministering and being an advocate for Ryan, whether that's through donations and obviously social media?
Thank you for asking. I'll share my GoFundMe link below. I'll do a more detailed update in our next interview on what's happening with me, what's happening with my children. I have been sharing a little bit about it, quite a lot about it actually, on my Telegram channel. But for now, the network is attempting to collect child support. Right. And I'm like, okay, this is what they do, right? And I knew this was going to be the next thing in the playbook, right? They render you homeless, destitute, and disabled, and then they demand child support. And of course, the penalty for not paying child support is imprisonment. And so I am kind of doing a back and forth with my ex-husband's attorney right now, prayerfully praying through my next steps. I still have not had contact with my children. That's my top priority, is continuing to heal and maintain some level of stability, agency, and dignity for myself. I don't even have a car right now. And so that I can then do what I need to do to get them back. And I have no doubt in my mind that I'm going to be able to do that. But there are some steps and some things and some resources that I'm going to need to attain and maintain in order for that to happen.
And so we'll have your GoFundMe linked below. And then you mentioned your Telegram. Where else are you on social media? And people have been wondering about your YouTube. They're like, where's the Quickening Project? And so you also now have your own YouTube under the Song of the Lamb as well. Do you want to just share where people can find you and anything that you want to add to that?
Yeah, I'm on YouTube at the Song of the Lamb, and I'm on Instagram at the Song of the Lamb as well. You can email me if you'd like to get in touch at the Song of the Lamb 144 at gmail.com. But the best place to connect would be the Telegram channel. I don't really use the YouTube channel so much. I don't have the songs anymore, unfortunately, from the Quickening Project. They were taken from me as a disciplinary measure for not cooperating with the network, and they were removed from all streaming platforms. But if you could pray for their restoration, their worship songs that I wrote in the deep pit of the valley, that Abba used, and they did serve a purpose. So it's not that it was a total waste, because they did enable my process of deprogramming. Worship has been the most powerful weapon in breaking down the lies and the strongholds that the walls of programming creates in the mind and in the heart and in the soul. And so the cool thing is, though, as I'm getting more songs, I'm planning to share more of them on the Telegram channel with you all soon.
That's wonderful. And people, even if you're not super active on YouTube, people that only use YouTube and maybe don't have Telegram, they can go comment on your post at least and connect with you and support you there. So I will have all of Kadaya's links below. And Kadaya, just thank you. You know, you carry the weight of the world on your shoulders. You're fighting your own battle and a battle for your children and to be reunited with them. And yet you devote so much of your time to help others. And that's evident in your Telegram channel, how many people you pour into. And now being Ryan's champion while he's going through this extremely horrific circumstance that he doesn't deserve and that was wrongly put on him. And so I just want to thank you from the bottom of my heart. You are just one of the most giving, amazing people I've ever met before. And I also know that this is going to work out in your favor and that God's working his ways for you. But I know that this has to be really heavy at times. And I just ask everybody to pray over you and to keep praying for Ryan, for these best circumstances to happen, for Kadaya to be reunited with her children, for Ryan to simply get out of this situation and not have to serve even 2 years. He's been in there for, you know, not even that long. And I'm sure it's felt like a lifetime, and he didn't even deserve 1 day in there. So we need to try to get this quick, get this solved and resolved. And I ask all of you guys to please pray for Kadaya and for Ryan. And just thank you for coming on again and for sharing, Kadaya.
Thank you for having me. And thanks for everybody who's listening. I love you guys.
So head down the show notes, you guys. Like she said, send Ryan letters. Please donate if you're able to. Donate to Kadaya and Ryan. Please share this testimony. Share Ryan's links. Help spread the word. Join Kadaya's Telegram channel. All those links will be below. So you guys, thank you so much for listening. God bless you all, and we will see you next time.